Welcome the day after the 4th, the 5th of July,
Yes.
in the second half of uh, the year and of the 250 years of America's being. And we're here to talk about all the crazy stuff that's happening in the Supreme
Mm-hmm.
Court, in the country in general. And we're just going to check into a little bit of hot topics today, but also just say what's up. But
Yeah.
first order of business, since the last time that we talked in between now, there's a new attorney in the building. So please give it up for attorney Maya Young, because now this
Yes. Yes.
podcast and platform is ran by attorney Maya Young, an attorney.
Attorney. Yes.
So,
Thank you.
so yeah, so please address her
As
accordingly.
such. Thank you.
A member of
Thank
the
you.
DC bar, like
Thank
I
you.
am. So,
Yes.
welcome to the bar,
Very
Maya.
much Olivia
Congratulations.
Pope. Yes.
Yes. Well,
Yes.
yes.
Well, yes. Yes.
Congratulations again, Maya. Welcome to the bar.
Thank you, Meg. I'm excited. It's great.
Yes.
Honestly, because we talked about it briefly, it feels the exact same, but
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of, I think when you start law school, obviously you always think about getting to the point where you're licensed. So it does
Yeah.
feel very fulfilling. But yeah, I'm excited. Two attorneys now.
Two
Two
attorneys. What's better
attorneys.
than one? Two.
Two.
Especially when they're the
Yes.
same hue as you. But
Hello. Yes.
um, but yeah, so we're excited for that. And we're just gonna jump right into the topics. I did want to bring up something else that I hadn't we hadn't talked about in the episode we lost.
Hmm.
But data centers and kind of how crazy all these things are, but also like the lack of an arm of enforcement for them. So I'll bring it up later in
Mm.
the episode as well. But we can jump in and talk about kind of like the Supreme Court
Mm-hmm.
and what's happening there. I don't know if y'all have been aware of following, but Maya has put together some brief rundowns of some major decisions that have come down the Supreme Court of late. So if you missed
Mm-hmm.
those things on our page, be sure to check them out. We talked about birthright citizenship. We talked
Mm-hmm.
about the Cook and Slaughter decisions. What else did we hit
Mm-hmm.
on that came down recently, Maya?
We talked about the BPJ decision. We talked about the campaign financing decision.
Okay.
Really, all the things that the Supreme Court is kind of like ending their October 2025 term on. They're trying to go home.
Yeah.
So these are kind of like all of the decisions that have kind of been in limbo for like the past year, year and a half or so. So yeah. And if you don't have access to Instagram, we also posted them on Raising the 5% TikTok. So check that out. And it's just a brief rundown, like May said, because I know everyone's not really into listening to the oral arguments or reading the like very, very long SCOTUS opinions. And so if you just want a
Very,
quick,
very long.
very, very long. So if you
Yes.
just want a quick little Spark Notes, one pager, three paragraph, I did that for y'all so that we could just make it more accessible for y'all because I think, the law and SCOTUS opinion should be accessible. So check that out on Instagram and TikTok.
So I think if you're okay with it, we could can I run through the little things you did and read them out
Yeah.
real? I'm gonna run because I want to talk about Cook and Slaughter. So
Yes.
I'll read what we put up for Trump v. Cook and Slaughter. So if you're not familiar, in 2025, President Trump came in and basically decided he was going to just kind of revamp the entire federal workforce
Mm-hmm.
and fire a bunch of agency and department heads. And also, there's this push on the right, which kind of comes out in Neil Gorsuch's opinion
Mm-hmm.
about how they believe the federal government, the administrative agency arm of the federal government, kind of operates as a headless fourth arm of the federal government, and so
Yeah.
there is a attack against it. And in President Trump's kind of initial decisions and initial acts of power in 2025, he fired a bunch of people. So he attempted to fire Lisa
Right.
Cook, who is a member a member of the board of governors for the Federal Reserve System.
Mhm.
The Federal Reserve is basically the nation's central bank. Like, we don't
Mhm.
have a central bank anymore, but that's what they do. They're a board that oversees seven banks that are publicly and privately managed, and these board of governors are set to 14-year
Mm.
terms that are staggered. So presidents usually get to appoint one, or maybe one not at all if it doesn't work out in the way that the term is staggered, but is done that way to prevent the board from becoming a partisan entity
Mhm.
in a way that will fall victim to um, subjectivity,
Corruption.
corruption, and or I was going to use a nicer word. I was going to say subjectivity, like the Supreme Court
Yeah.
has, right, which is supposed to also be objective, right? So
Right.
basically, Trump tried to fire her in 2025. Her term didn't expire until 2038.
Mhm.
He claimed that she had uh, mortgage fraud, and he failed to use the proper notice and appeal procedures. The court
Mhm.
basically said in a 5-4 decision that the Federal Reserve's protection of cause will protect her employment, and doing away of that for cause protection will put her like position into at will employment and allow the president
Mhm.
to fire anybody at his own volition, as if
Mhm.
he was Secretary of State or someone that was serving in an expressly partisan
Mhm.
appointed position, in a way that the Federal Reserve is not created to do so.
Mhm.
And then in a companion case, well, not really, but a similar case was Trump v. Slaughter, where
Mhm.
Rebecca Slaughter and Alvarado Bedoya, I believe is how you say his
Mhm.
last name, were members of the Federal Trade Commission. And if you went to law school, you know the Humphreys executors case was the exception to the rule when it related to the president having the power to hire and fire folks.
Mhm.
So Humphreys executor carved out an exception that allowed the president only to fire people for positions that had some sort of like intrinsic or explicit relationship to his role as the president.
Mhm.
And the FTC was under nearly a century of precedent, removed enough from the power of the presidency that the president had to have some type of reason for inefficiency, negligence of duty, or malfeasance in
Mhm.
office in order to remove these people. But
Mhm.
in that decision, the court said the president could remove
Yeah.
people. In a 6-3 decision, they said he could remove them outright. Whereas in the other decision, they said no, the president can't just fire a board of governor because he feels like it, basically. And so
Yeah.
Humphrey's executor was slaughtered by Slaughter and is dead on
Wow.
arrival.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see that. And one of the things that I really found interesting about that case was, and one of the things I think is hard to kind of like wrap your head around, and Maya and I are also going to be investing in a series about the history of the Supreme Court and
Mhm.
talking more about it. But the what history of the Supreme Court and its relationship to ignoring slavery and or like
Mhm.
important cases to black folks in general.
Mhm.
And some of the things I've been reading about focuses on how the Supreme Court kind of minimizes historically the impact of slavery and Reconstruction. And in
Mhm.
that uh, Slaughter opinion, Chief Justice Roberts is talking about the Reconstruction amendments and talking about the time period when Andrew Jackson and the radical Republicans were fighting about his ability to hire and fire folks in the executive branch. And he was upset with a law that was passed that basically required him to get Senate's permission, sort of say,
Mhm.
before he removed folks, and he was upset about that. But the Chief Justice and the court writes it in a way that makes it seem like it was just this clear cut
Mhm.
violation. Like the radical Republicans were just like out of their mind and crazy for trying to do this. When Andrew Johnson was a Civil War apologist and a segregationist that was
Mm.
trying to keep black people, from being able to
Exactly.
express and understand full citizenship in the country. And one of the
Mhm.
things we were talking about yesterday is how refreshing it is to have Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court.
Yes, my justice.
Yes,
Yes.
because she is able to write with precision and with
Mhm.
clarity, that
Mhm.
to speak to the facts of history. Like Supreme Court justices,
Mhm.
they're historians, and historically they have not written about black people.
Mhm.
Even Clarence Thomas, right? He has had this colorblind constitution except for birthright citizenship, and
Right.
that opinion, now he can see color, but he's
Right.
never written about the experience of black folks and what was happening for black people in that time period historically, and why these things were happening. Like they write about uh the law as if it's this bubble, and like
Mhm.
only the cosmic things, or the important constitutional question before the court at that moment matter, and not
Mhm.
everything else that was
Mhm.
happening around it and why these things kind of took place. And
Mhm.
so having KBJ on the court in that birthright opinion, for example, to talk about like how this stuff was happening for Black folks was just like
Mhm.
a breath of fresh
Breath of
air.
fresh air. Yeah. The thing that intrigued me the most, I mean, even getting back to, like, the Cook and the Slaughter opinions, what I think is so interesting, specifically in the Cook opinion, as you just mentioned, how they talked about if they were to kind of adjust the for cause employment standard that is mentioned in the statute to almost him being able to fire anyone as he would, it would kind of adjust that statute into an at will employment. And at will
Right.
employment means that you can just fire anyone literally just because you
For
want
whatever
to,
reason.
for
Hmm.
whatever reason. What I think is interesting is that in the case that is intended to be, I think, like, as you said, a companion case, which actually differs entirely on the decision, which is like very interesting because it also overturned Humphrey's executor with the Slaughter case, is that in reading the opinion, it kinda made it s they the court to me made it seem as though they feel that administrative agencies and officers are almost subservient to the president, which I
Hmm.
think is a very hard take if we really are going to choose moving forward to think that, because I mean, obviously, like, Chevron is dead. Chevron
Right.
died, like, years ago, and I think in the Chevron case and Chevron deference kind of allowed for administrative agencies to exist within their own realm, that they
Mhm.
were free from that. They actually had, like, rulemaking, adjudicatory, and, those
It
kind
was
of
like it was
powers,
like it was like a baby government. You
like a
know, they
baby
had
government.
quasi legislative powers, quasi
Yes.
judicial powers.
They had
Yeah.
their own processes for things,
Yeah.
they had their own rules, all these standards, and I think I'm interested to see how the future of things post-Slaughter will come about, as now we talk about the ways in which, and the court has also talked about in various opinions, within its history, how dangerous it is to expand the power of the
President.
government as if it is a monarchy, as if you are really having this one person decide what happens without cause, without reason, without justification. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You in one sense, and I grant, like, I get, the Federal Trading Commission and the Federal Reserve, very different, like very different entities, very different standards, very different rules for sure. But
Hmm.
I think ultimately, in my opinion, it feels like with the Slaughter case, they were expanding the president's power to do something that honestly was never in his power to begin with. It was always, even in the framing of Lisa Cook, it definitely was an attempt to fire her. But he, someone who lacks not only constitutional reverence, but constitutional like education, honestly, he
Hmm.
genuinely thought that it was within his power to do so. And I
Yeah.
think when you are dealing with someone who is unfortunately, like, valiantly ignorant, like, he takes pride in the fact of his ignorance, and the court is now not being granted neutral, yes, but that accountability sort of judiciary to say, "Hey, I'm not gonna lie, like, you cannot do that. You are the president. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the commander in chief, sure, but, like, you can't do this." And I think with Slaughter, they recognize the harm in which it could occur. They recognize the damage, and they recognize, like, yeah, probably not. And then in the same opinion, they made it seem as though administrative agencies only exist for the president,
At the helm of the presidency.
at the
Yeah.
him of the president, and I think that
And
is a
it.
very dangerous description because ultimately they don't.
Yeah.
They don't, and also I think about what happens now, what happens when this term is over, and
Yeah.
what happens when the outcome of things that this president felt like it was well within his right to do, that there are just effects that affects people for the rest of their, what, like, I don't know, it's just the
And
court
that's
is very interesting lately.
and that's what Sonia Sotomayor was getting at in her dissent.
Mhm.
I think in Slaughter, it's like, because one thing I've noticed too, and I don't know, maybe I didn't pay attention, or maybe the cases that are selected in law school don't have as much. I feel like the court has a lot of vitriol for each other
Yeah,
the
very
majority
shady.
dissent opinions. You know what I mean? Like it's always. Let's say
Very
this:
shady.
the court is always shady. Like the
Very shady.
dissents and the majority opinions always shade each
That's
other.
why I recommend, I know, like, who's gonna listen to an argue, I get it,
Yeah,
and who wants to read, like, a
it's fun
90
though.
to
I
a
mean,
100-page opinion?
it's fun,
I
and
think you
it's not even really
should.
90 pages because
It's
like
really not.
it's really like 40 pages because
Yeah.
first of all, it's justified to all be centered in the middle of the page. So it's really like
Yeah.
25.
Yeah.
And half of the font is footnotes, right?
Right.
And so but the opinions are a lot of times the majority responding to the
The
dissent,
constitutional
and the
court.
dissent responding to the majority,
And
right?
it's
But
so
so
shady because they are all on the bench together. They all
literally,
heard the same argument at the
and
same
they're
time.
sitting in conference
And there's
rooms discussing this like
like,
at
oh
tandem.
my
You know what
gosh,
I
it's
mean?
hilarious. It's
So,
hilarious.
and then they're sending these drafts around, like
Back and forth. Like,
the
you know
process
what I'm gonna
of
say.
yeah, the process
I
of how an
love
opinion
it.
becomes an
I love
opinion is
it.
actually messy as hell.
I love
Somebody
it.
should make a reality TV show,
No, I would watch that.
or like a scripted TV show rather, about like the Supreme Court. Oh, that would.
They would shut that
Let
down.
me get an idea. You know
I'll
what I
say,
mean?
talk to Shonda because otherwise they're gonna
what we
shut
ca-
that down.
what can we call it? Supreme. I don't know. But anyway,
Something. Shonda, girl, Shonda, I don't know if you watched this, what you did
right.
with Scandal, your best. One
Yeah.
of your best. Get something in that lab,
Yeah. A
with
scripted
that. I
Supreme
think
Court
so
TV
I would
show.
watch that.
I would too.
You
No
gotta
cap.
have that. You gotta have all the characters. I'm
Yeah.
gonna need
I mean, and you got 250 years of
I'm
cases
saying.
to write
Yeah,
about. So I
need
would
that.
I would do it. But
Even a book. Even I would read a fictional book about it as well.
well, we can write that, child.
No, they gonna
But
shut us down. I'm
it,
telling you. I'm telling you.
it's fiction. What they gonna do? It's a body of
This
fiction. You know
isn't
what I mean?
real
Yep.
unless
You know,
you
so
relate.
Viola Davis just wrote a book
Mhm.
called Judge Stone. Why we can't do it?
You're right.
Anyway,
And she was Michelle. You're right. You're right.
I
You're
was
right.
fixing to say the so one thing that I thought was interesting. Chief Justice Roberts writes the opinion in Cook and in Slaughter, right?
Mhm.
He wrote the 5-4 opinion in
Mhm.
Cook. He wrote the 6-3 opinion
Mhm.
in Slaughter. In neither opinion
Right.
that he writes does he mention the other opinion and the effects it'll have on it, because it is in a lot of ways like illogical to think that
Mhm.
there is a you know
Connection
uh,
somehow.
or a carve out, right?
Mhm.
Because when you put the cases together, Slaughter is killing Humphrey's executor. Slaughter is saying
Mhm.
that the presidency is entangled in everything he makes appointments to.
Mhm.
If the president makes appointments to the FTC, the Federal Reserve Board,
Mhm.
and you're saying in Slaughter, the president has to have the power to remove everybody that he is connected to. If you're saying that
Mhm.
in Slaughter and saying that Humphrey's executor was doomed from the jump,
Mhm.
but then in Cook saying, well,
He
there's a
actually
carve
can't
out
do that.
here. There's a
Yeah.
carve out here. But and then the justification for the reasoning in Slaughter is that this has created messy case law. This has created a problem. I don't think, for me personally, I don't see how the court can't foresee another
Mhm.
president in 2028 or 2030 or
Mhm.
2020, 2031 attempting to fire a member of the board of governors and
Mhm.
saying, you said in Slaughter, the president
Mhm.
has to have the power to remove someone because I have this appointment power and this works in this way. I don't see how the court doesn't think it's creating another um, Humphrey's executor quagmire
Mhm.
with the FTC case, with the Federal Reserve case, and
Mhm.
overturning this. Because to me, the Federal Trade Commission and the Federal Reserve are different in
Mhm.
nature, but essentially they're both divorced from the presidency in a way that they
Mhm.
affect the economy in a way that doesn't necessarily have to align perfectly with
Mhm.
administrative goals of a presidency. And
Mhm.
so, and I also think the other problem, which what you talked about too, is talking about how like the independence of administrative agencies,
Mhm.
is that Congress for a century has understood, without codifying anything, has understood the law to mean that they can create independent quasi legislative, quasi
Mhm.
executive, quasi judicial agencies that
Mhm.
can act on behalf of all of those bodies without direct or direct hire and fire power. But also these people can't be removed from office. Like there is
Yeah.
not a it's not an absolute bar. It's just a small protection to keep them
Yeah.
from being removed, for purely political
Yeah.
reasons. And I don't know. I think it's gonna be, like you said, interesting to see kind of what's left of the administrative state when the dust settles, because I think it's gonna be hard for us to kind of operate the government. I think the government is already slow and it's
Yeah.
unresponsive and it's unhelpful at times. So it's like, what do we do now?
Maybe the goal is to, like, cease the administrative state.
Yeah. No, I think that is the
Like,
goal.
because I think even reviewing decisions, it was very interesting because on one hand, they're saying exactly what we think. Like, yes, these
Mhm.
are quasi-legislative, quasi, rulemaking, quasi all these different things, and yet, like, this is the president of the United States. Do you
Yeah.
guys not know who the president of the United States is? It's like, "Girl, yeah, we know the president. We know his rule. Like, we understand
Mhm.
all that. Does he know?" And at the same time, like, beyond this, the question that I just keep thinking about that honestly it's less of a question and more of a comment on the current state of the judiciary is that I feel like they exist in this sort of realm where things are idealistic, that they're not considering the possibility that a president could come and say, "Hey, I know in this decision where you struck down precedent, and now with this new common law that you created in this decision, that now I can do this." I don't think they're considering that because to them, this is a question that will never come up again. And I think that's very harmful because that's not the role of the judiciary to decide that. And ultimately, I think we're gonna find ourselves in some sort of singularity where we're just answering the same question over and over and over again because there is so much confusion that you can hold both of these cases in tandem and you can read both decisions and still be very confused. So, like, he can fire people, but at the
The
same time,
dissent
he
is
can't.
confused. The
Yeah,
dissent is
like,
confused.
and
Yeah.
I so he can do that or
The
he can't.
conservative dissent is confused in Cook, and then the liberal dissent is
It's
confused in
confused and
Slaughter.
slaughter. And so
So
it's sort of
yeah.
like what we talked about yesterday, it feels like the court is just kind of caving in on itself, that yet
Mhm.
we stand here, we listen to these same arguments, we come to different conclusions, which is fine, but the conclusions are different in the way in which they're even going things are going to be formulated and things are going to be administered. So now if we can't agree on that and we're the role of judiciary to do so, then what does that mean for people who are to administer that? What does that mean for the president moving forward? Also, I think it's apart from the rules and everything, I think it lacks humanity to realize that this man talked about her personal mortgage issues, and he then took to a social media site to talk about how she needed to be fired immediately. Then subsequent to that, he mentioned that she no longer fit within his administrative duties. What administrative duties are you talking about that has to do with her personal mortgage? If we're talking about personal issues, ain't you okay. So, like, I think it's all interesting, and I think it's hypocritical, and I think sometimes which is why we talked about KBJ being a breath of fresh air, I think she really brings humanity back to the court because ultimately the court sees these things as if they are just, like, entities, and I feel like it's maybe because of the binary distinction of people that we learn in law school that you see cases as they are, you don't really take into account the personal sort of, like, connection to things, but I think in reading this, I can't imagine that they would see, like, this is the president of the United States trying to do this to an administrative agency officer.
Mhm.
Forget the term, forget the standard, forget the statute, like, he wants to do this because he feels like he can. And I read this and I know these facts. I've been in the judiciary longer than he's been president, and yet, yeah, you can do it. Also, though, the Federal, Reserve, though, no, you can't do that. You can fire her, though, but n
Right.
no, not
Don't
her.
don't
It's
put
like, it's confusing.
don't put your hands on my money is what I
Li
heard the court
that's
say. What
literally,
I heard.
leave the
So
money alone.
right. Do what you want with
Her?
all that, but
Okay.
leave that money
Leave
alone.
that money, though. Yeah, and I don't know, I just think it creates a very, scary
Yeah.
future. That's why even with other decision with campaign financing, I think that's very scary that the court feels as though there should be no limits on campaign spending, that a political party can accept or a political candidate can accept as much money as they want. And I think for the whole point of the statute from the Federal Election Commission was that it's intended to curb corruption. It's intended to curb any sort of anything, any sort of idea, any sort of look of corruption, that if you can give as much money as you want to a current candidate in their ads, in their processes, in their literature that they give to voters, it's gonna look like you're trying to buy the vote, and that's unethical. And I think the court heard that and still said, but you know what? Yeah, do it. Give them your money. You wanna give them $1,000,000 as many times as you want during the campaign?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine. It's not fine. That's literally unethical. So I think the court is just, like, caving in. I think
yeah,
at some point, we'll get to a point where the court will then ask themselves the question. Someone will sue in the Supreme Court. Is the
mm,
Supreme Court a valid judiciary in the state? Like, we're gonna get to that point, I think, eventually, where they're asking and they're answering the Constitution of whether they have the power or authority to even rule. It
mm.
like, I think we're getting to that point because it's nearing obsolescence a little bit.
Yeah. It is. It's very scary the stuff that's coming down, and even like with birthright, the fact that it was such,
Yeah.
like I don't know. I was thinking too just now about how like the way that they write opinions and the way that they kind of just like ignore all the other things and like the possibilities, like you said, like stick it to the facts and like a charter law school, like to
Mhm.
remove all the other things like from around your environment, your biases,
Mhm.
like that. And I think it's just like a great lie that we perpetuate the idea
Mhm.
that the court is objective. The Supreme Court, any judiciary from the Supreme Court to municipal court, is not objective. They're not, and it's like it is
It's very
all
hard to be
it is.
when you're
I
appointed by someone who has to be associated to a party, no matter
Exactly.
what.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Especially in the federal level, like
Yeah.
you're appointed by someone at the federal level that has allegiance to a political party. That party is going to be the party that gets you into the seat, right? Because now it used to be maybe I think maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, judges were just appointed, even if it
Yeah.
didn't matter who was the president. If you got 90, 80 votes on a confirmation vote, you know what I mean? And I think even looking at like Justice Marshall
Mhm.
retiring during H. Bush's term was
Mhm.
understanding that like the court the president's gonna appoint someone who's qualified for the job, and the Senate's gonna confirm someone's qualified for the job, and it's not gonna be this super partisan process, but it was and it
It
is,
was.
and I think it has been maybe since then, right, where it's like these types of appointments. I also think, I think the introduction of Thurgood Marshall onto the bench also maybe brought about this sort of partisan thing, because I think before Thurgood Marshall, the court and the Senate and the president, the country didn't have to wrestle with all of the facts about putting a non-white man,
Mhm.
I should say, because not even just about black people, because Thurgood was the first non-white man.
Mhm.
That's what we should say. We should qualify with that, because there was no woman, there was
Mhm.
no other minority. He was the first one on the bench that wasn't a white man on the highest bench in the land. So to have the senators have to wrestle with that, and to have the president to have to find someone qualified to be on the nation's highest court that wasn't a white man. And I think now every president since who has nominated someone has nominated, except for Bush, a non-white man to
Mhm.
right, because Clinton, who Clinton put on the bench, he put Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and
Mhm.
H.W. Bush put Thomas,
Right.
and then Clinton put RBG, and what's the other one? Did he put Souter on the bench? Yeah. No, Souter was Bush.
Yeah.
He put Breyer on the bench. He put Breyer on the
Yeah,
bench.
Steven.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then Bush put Souter, and HW must have put Sandra Leon on the bench too. Or was
Let's
that
see.
Bush too? Because she was on the bench in the late 90s, 81. Oh, that was Reagan. Okay. So Reagan. So basically, though, every president.
Yeah, HW put Souter, HW put Thomas, Clinton put RBJ, Clinton put Breyer. Um, Baby Bush put Alito. Obama was Sotomayor, Kagan. Trump was Gorsuch and Kavanaugh
And Barrett.
and Barrett, and then, yeah, Biden did KBJ.
So every president but Baby Bush has put it in addition to white men, at least
Mhm.
non-white.
One non-white, yeah.
And so I think it's interesting for the court to have to wrestle with what that dynamic brings, right? And I think for the country to have to wrestle with that, and I think that I don't know where I was going with that because I lost my train of thought.
Right.
Okay, so my point is that the court has never had to wrestle with like intersectional identities and having people who actually lived through some of the experiences and decisions that they were making
Mm,
in real time, right? Like I think Thurgood Marshall, for the first time. Oh, I know. I was talking about how when Thurgood retired, he had it was like the assumption that the court would just pick somebody who was qualified,
mm,
right? And so I think the process of selecting judges and justices to be a diverse group of people, right? Because the federal judiciary is still largely white men,
right,
and
right.
it's increasingly becoming more diverse, more women, more people of color, more black people. But I think
Mhm.
the court didn't really start to wrestle with that until the
Thurgood
1970s,
Marshall.
right, when
Yeah.
Marshall came to the bench. Um, and so we really only have less than 50 years of the court being intentional about diversifying the president and the Senate being intentional about diversifying the judiciary. And so now you have judges and Supreme Court justices who have this lens of understanding and this way of
Mhm,
thinking about things that
mhm,
never seen before. And I think it really is interesting. Like even with having Clarence and Katanji on the bench at the same time, like we've never had two black folks on the bench at the same
yeah,
time, and to have a conservative black person and a
yeah,
liberal black person, right? Because and I think those of us in educated spaces are and black spaces are always like we cast Thomas to the side, but if we keep it a buck, a lot of us know Clarence Thomases in our families or in our lives. Maybe not
mhm,
directly, but we know some black men and some black women who
mhm,
are very conservative, who vote
mhm,
Republican, who
mhm,
believe in the things that the Supreme Court and that the Trump administration are doing right now. And
mhm.
so it is interesting to have like to hear the heads clashing, right? And to
Yeah,
like where they even like with SFFA
mhm,
2 or 3 years ago when they wrote separately there, and
mhm,
then Birthright to see Katanji tell this like true, honest history to rebut
mhm,
and to confront Justice Thomas's forgetfulness of his colorblind constitutionality, right?
mm,
And now he can see color, So it's
mhm,
like it is such a refreshing thing, but also it's interesting to see the court wrestle with how, it has never had to really it has never had someone on the bench who can speak truth to power because I've lived these experiences and my bias it's not from a point of sympathy or a point of let's lift up these poor Negroes or Indians or Asian Americans or whoever. But this is my people. These
mhm,
I understand women because I am a woman. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So it's interesting to see the court have to wrestle with that and to kind of like get people on their side. But yeah,
Yeah, I think they're juxtaposed constantly, and I
yeah,
think the something to think about is also that they kind of benefited from the same things. I mean, granted, we recognize the ways in which, like Clarence Thomas, he started off at, I believe he was in Catholic school when he was a young boy. Then he ended up going to high school. Then he ended up going to Yale, and something happened. And then he ended up going to law school. But something happened throughout the course of his
something in the middle.
adolescence. Yeah, something happened in the middle throughout the course of his adolescence where he was actually very aware. It talked like I don't know if it was in his book or if it's just through the course of interviews. They talk about how, with a young boy, he was very aware of the ways in which race played a big part in his life. He was very aware of the ways in which people were unkind to him or they denigrated him because of his Black identity. And growing up, that made him even more able to think about the ways in which not only I am a Black person, but like how my Blackness indirectly somehow affects you as either a Black person or a non-Black person. So much so that he got involved in the Black Panther Party. But it
Mm-hmm.
was, again, something that happened. And we talked about this yesterday. I don't know if it's the proximity to privilege that can kind of I think you either go in two directions. You can either get proximity to immense privilege and you recognize, wow, this is it. Like, okay, I'm looking around, I'm one of one. I think I kind of like that because now I realize I could have been here and it has nothing to do with my race or my gender or my socioeconomic status. It has everything to do with the fact that I could do it because
Mm-hmm.
I am just that. Like, I could do that. And not only do I appreciate this proximity to privilege so much, I too want to exclaim and have the same type of privilege because I feel as though if I can do it, then other people can do it. And I have no sympathy and I have no empathy and I ignore all those things. Or the other direction is, wow, I'm in this place of immense privilege. It took a lot to get here, though. Why did I have to jump through so many hoops and so much access and all of these different things to get here? And now, as I'm here, I still feel excluded. I still feel like I'm the only one here. I still feel like the things that I'm living and experiencing on a day to day basis are unrelatable to these people that are looking me in my face. Clarence went to Yale. Katanji went to Harvard. They
Mm-hmm.
both were in Ivy League schools. They both were. I we talk about in our episodes before. May and I both went to PWI law schools. We both graduated in 2024. With us graduating in the year of our Lord 2024, there were not as many Black law students. Granted, we went to an HBCU, so everybody at our HBCU was Black. To then matriculate and then go to a PWI school, at least for me, I don't know the exact number for you, May, but in my graduating class in 2024, I think maybe less than like 15 or 20 Black people in
Yeah.
a class of 180 graduated.
And 10 of
And
us.
so thinking about how it was in 2024, now let's think about when Clarence Thomas graduated law school and when KBJ graduated law school. And it's not to say that they didn't have like Black folks there, that their Black community wasn't there, that there weren't Black folks outside of that community. But I think it's something to think about that you could either go one direction where you want to only become more exclusive, you want to stay in that privilege and you want to hold in it, or you want to expand that and you want to say, no, there should be more access. I'm calling out the ways in which this privilege not only has affected me, but it will affect other people. I don't want to be the one of one. I want to be one of many. And I think that's the constant juxtaposition between KBJ and Clarence. I think KBJ is aware of these things and how they happen. She's aware of the ways in which being on the judiciary for most of her adult life at various different levels, even we talked yesterday, she was on the Sentencing Commission. You see the ways in which these things that you're talking about and deciding on actually affect people's lives. You see the ways in which it affects reentry, rehabilitation, their mental state, their physical state, their families, their socioeconomic status, if they can even vote, if they have a choice in any of the decisions that you're even coming across. Whereas we've seen with Thomas, as he's gotten older, he's only gotten more conservative, right? He's only separated himself more from the plight of things that he feels like no longer affects him because he doesn't think it, he just doesn't think it does. So I think that constant juxtaposition, it is refreshing, but at the same time, it's something to think about that at the time that we have 2 Black justices on the bench, they couldn't be more different. They couldn't be more apart.
Gonna be
And
like
yet
that.
with the same benefits, the same experiences,
Yeah.
2 different responses to the problem that is still going to affect once both of them are off the bench is that since the founding of the Supreme Court, there have only still been 3 Black folks.
Black people. And one black
That's
woman.
it. And 1 Black woman, and she just got there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something to think about, but at the same time, I do agree. And I think in the same vein that everyone probably knows a Clarence Thomas, everybody also knows a KBJ. And I think it's something, KBJ is extremely refreshing in her decisions, though I really enjoy reading them. They kind of almost read like a book. Like she writes, her pen is just so eloquent and she's so witty and so funny. If you have not read a KBJ decision, I highly, highly implore you to. You will laugh. I can give you that. It's
And
funny.
Supreme Court opinions in general are pretty funny. I'm
They
not gonna.
are, they talk so much about each
Day
other,
O'Connor,
it's so shady.
Sandra Day O'Connor was messy in her
No, she
opinion,
was.
and
Good and messy.
a little mess for this too. I saw this on TikTok. Her and damn, why is he moving? Sorry. Her and Justice Rehnquist used to date, and she turned
Oh,
him down. Like she
girl,
turned
I would
Justice
too.
Rehnquist down,
Ooh,
and like that
I
was
would
her
even.
ex.
Ooh,
So she every time they were against each other on the bench, she was like extra shady to him and her.
yeah, 'cause
So
ooh, I need to go back and read some opinions now
yeah,
that I
I'll never forget that
know.
was she wrote the I think it was a plurality opinion in that case, the FDA case that made tobacco regulations stronger,
Oh,
and
yeah.
she was like, uh, the majority uses musty or
Ooh,
musky law to do
ooh,
something. I'm like musky. I didn't expect to see that
musky.
in, in a
Girl,
Supreme
now
Court opinion.
what interpretive canon is that under?
Right,
Musky. Now, is that originalist or that's
right.
textualist? Let me know. That must be that's the purpose of it. That must be the purpose. Okay. How musky.
But
I love that.
yeah, no, it is refreshing to see that, and even so, like I think it also speaks to like the plight of the black woman too, though, because Ketanji Brown
Mm,
Jackson gets so much flack, and her confirmation vote was so close, but she is without question the
the
most
most.
qualified Supreme Court justice maybe in history. Much like take it for whatever, however you feel about her, Kamala Harris was the most qualified candidate for
For
president
president.
in the
Mhm.
history, in modern history for sure. I mean, first black person, first woman to be vice president, first black woman to be San Francisco DA, first black woman to be AG of the state of California, first black woman to be a senator from California, seventh black woman in history to be a United States senator. So it's like,
First
there's
to ever be vice president.
first woman, period, full
Woman.
stop, full stop. You know what I mean? Like
Had
a
Doug in
heartbeat
that
away from the
office,
presidency.
second gentleman. Had
How
Doug.
how much? What
What
else does she have to do to
child?
prove her worth? You know what I
They want
mean?
her to
That's
fly
like
the planes too.
apparently
Air
she got to
Force
get
One. You
she
gotta
got
be
to
the
get
Air
us to
Force One pilot.
Mars.
There's
So
lady here to do.
you
No,
know,
but that I feel like that always that's why I feel like the thing is when I was reading the birthright citizenship opinion, I thought the same way because I appreciated how she called out Thomas of like for some reason now your colorblind constitution got a little color in it.
right
Interesting.
now you can
Very
see.
now you can see you got them glasses on, you think you know everything. Interesting. And on one hand, I find like even reading his dissent I thought it was interesting that, like, Thomas, you have well associated with all the with affirmative action, with anything that has ever affected Black folks. You were so clear. The court should be a race neutral, colorblind entity. You consider the Constitution in its making to be colorblind, even when folks told you, girl, the quote unquote founding fathers wrote that with that quill pen and they went home to the enslaved people that they
Okay.
held in their house and you still were maintaining that it was colorblind. And now, when we're talking about birthright citizenship, specifically under the executive order that a president willed it to further his racism, to further his xenophobia, you are now maintaining that birthright citizenship should only apply to Black folks. And I think that's why Katanji's Justice Jackson, because girl, we're not even friends like that. I'm sorry. That's why Justice Jackson's opinion was so refreshing because she said, it's interesting that with this you are colorblind, but I also think like that constantly happens. The intersectionalities that we mentioned of being Black, of being women, of all these things that she was able to recognize like this doesn't only affect me, this affects all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Even the discussion of birthright citizenship to begin with had to happen because people who were born here, who had been enslaved, were not considered to be citizens. And yet, like, we are now here, years later, centuries later, and we're still having these same conversations. And you are maintaining, you as someone who didn't even want to admit that you had any relation to enslavement, that you didn't even want to admit that your access not only to the schools you went to, but to the court you sit on had no relation to enslavement at all. You now sit here in your robe and your glasses talking about this is just for Black people, and I'm supposed to give you a cookie and clap?
Right.
Girl, please. That's what I got from Justice Jackson's opinion. Girl, please.
I mean,
Full
and she
stop.
said, give us our 40 acres and a mule. On
The
top of that,
stat.
she was talking her stuff,
I
man.
loved it. On
Yeah,
every single opinion. Because I feel like on every single opinion, the thing that she does, she's gonna gather you. She's gonna really ask you rhetorical questions. She's gonna ask
very
you a question to
eloquently,
make you think. Very eloquent.
very professionally. She gonna get your
Very.
ass together.
Not only are you wrong, beloved,
But let me show you.
but you're very wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're aware of what you wrote. I don't know
yeah.
if you're aware of what you do, but where I'm from, we don't do that.
We don't do that.
Okay?
We don't
Let
do that
me
type
tell
of
you,
around here. I don't know what y'all do around there, but where I'm from, we don't do shit like
we
that.
don't do that. And she's gonna do it in such a way where after you read, it's like, I can't even argue it because you're right, girl. Like, no, you're right. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it is refreshing because I don't think, albeit the court is very shady in its opinions towards each other, even in the concurring opinions, which I feel like if you concur, you don't got to be shady towards me, girl. Just agree and go.
Not
But
at all.
they're all
Like
like, just
you,
agree.
you better lay low.
Yeah, like, okay.
Like
It's
for
like the
real.
concurring
Yeah.
opinions are like, you're right, but
You're right,
not for the
but you're not right for the
not
right
for the
reasons.
reasons you think. Like, it's,
Yeah.
like, so
Yeah.
shady. But with
Yeah.
KBJ, I feel like she's like, "No, let's be real. Like,
Yeah.
we all live in this country. We all understand the ways in which these things have happened. The court is not just an entity that we talk about. We are real people on this court
Mhm.
talking about real people. Let's conduct ourselves as such." I feel like in every single opinion, she's just like, "Do you have some like, have some couth. Ca
Yeah.
be mannerable at least. Like, don't talk about this as if you don't know what you're talking about. And if you don't know what you're talking about, maybe I can have that robe." Like, I love that because she's just always gonna gather you. So, thank you
I
for your service.
I I'm looking on my bookshelf because I'm thinking about something else that we didn't talk about yesterday that I want to bring up because it's on my brain. But how do you feel? I hate to go here. I know they're gonna.
Uh-oh.
If this one goes popular, they gonna the aunties and uncles gonna be mad at us in the
Oh,
comments.
God.
But it's not our fault. Our professor started it, and I'm actually going to reference her book. Um, how
I
do you
love
feel?
her.
How do you feel about the opening of the Obama Center? I read a piece on Substack.
I think beautiful gowns. I think it's a beautiful building.
I know, right? I read,
I think
I
it's
read a piece
gorgeous.
on I read a piece on Substack the other day. It said, "Oh, let me read the title to you."
I think I saw that. I think I liked it.
Yeah, I restacked it. I think.
Yeah. No, beautiful building. Stevie Wonder singing Higher Ground.
Yeah, the
Couldn't have written it
Obama,
couldn't have
the,
written it better myself.
the Obama Presidential Library is a monument to nothingness.
Yeah.
Um,
I liked that. I remember reading that. Beautiful building. It's gorgeous.
and I watched an episode. I just was watching him and Michelle speak for People Magazine, talking about the library opening and things like that. And my conflict with
Mhm.
President Obama is always this, and I think it's really more of a conflict I'm having about black politicians in general.
Mhm.
When is symbolism not enough? When is symbolism like when are we going to be done being grateful for symbolism? Like I think
Mm.
the fact that he accomplished the feat, the fact that he became president, all of the symbolic reasons are reasons and they're valid. And I also understand too, like I think one problem with the black left and the left in general is that sometimes we forget that people are at different stages in their activism. So
Right.
some folks are not going to be as radicalized as
Yeah.
like the rest of us.
Some
And so,
people can't be Asada first day out.
some people it's a slow walk, and some
Yeah.
people are going to be closer to the middle than they are to the far left.
Yeah.
And I understand that. But people are because of misogynoir, I think are so quick to like the response to why Kamala started on November 5th. If election day was
Mhm.
November 4th, on November 5th, they were ready to talk about why she lost.
Mhm.
With Obama, he hasn't been president for a decade, and we still can't talk about all the shit that he did wrong. He left the White House in 2016.
You call him a war criminal, they'll burn you at the stake.
They will run you out of America,
He
actually.
was.
You know what
He
I mean?
was.
And it's
I feel
like
like 2 things can be true at once, and I think
absolutely they
that's
can.
something that is the struggle. I think the answer to your question, when is symbolism not enough? I think unfortunately we have always lived in a society that sees black folks as ornamental, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
always been seen as this trophy to be held. Even when we think about the Reconstruction era, right? How amazing it was that all of these free black folks have been elected into higher positions of power. And yet the response immediately was to not only get rid of those folks in power, but then to criminalize black folks for simply just existing, to then use legislation to codify
Jim Crow.
those restrictions and to almost make the subjugation of black folks not just legal, but a mandate required. So much so that we are still seeing the effects of this today, that there are
Mm-hmm.
still black folks, us as black folks in this country ain't free still. And I think Obama being able to be elected, not just elected, but to have gone to Howard or Harvard and to have been the first black president of the law review, to have been from a senator from Chicago, Illinois, to have had a wife and two daughters, this beautiful image of when we think about someone who's going to be the first black president, that is who we're going to be. I think that was it. And I think people talk about Obama sometimes as if he is like not here with us, like as if he is not a person right now, like a,
Like
a,
he
a
doesn't
husband.
still have like the weight of
Yeah.
and you know what I think about a lot? Jimmy Carter, post
Mhm,
presidency, spoke so clearly about human
mhm,
rights issues and
mhm,
was a humanitarian and did so much
mhm,
work. And even his wife has been
mhm,
increasingly becoming and increasingly aligning herself in black spaces almost
mhm,
exclusively post
mhm,
presidency.
mhm,
And in the video I just watched of him, sorry, hold on,
mm.
because this is just won't do right. I'm trying to get it centered.
Oh,
Okay, even in the video I just watched with him on People Magazine, he on one
sometimes it
hand
feels like he's still campaigning.
that, and he also is like he has, I guess it's just who he is. He has a fundamental belief. There's a class, there's a generation of black folks who believe in this multiracial,
Mhm,
multi-ethnic
mhm,
democracy in a way in America in a way that he truly believes his role and his legacy is to be the president, the 44th president of America, and that I don't think that the blackness, him being black, is a defining characteristic of his president for him. I think it's significant. I think it's a fact that he recognizes, but
mhm,
I don't know that he is someone who, I don't know that based on what he has said, it doesn't
mhm,
seem like he wants to be remembered as the black president. I think
mhm,
he wants to be remembered as America's president who was black. And
mm,
that um I think that kind of affects a lot of the decision making in the way, like his DOJ was, that was, and it was rough with his DOJ,
mhm,
especially with the Mike Brown stuff, and
mhm,
that whole time period was rough. But I think now, like in one instance, it is something to celebrate, and I think even like there are people in Chicago who were fighting back against the incorporation, the building of the
mhm,
library itself because of the people it was displacing in that neighborhood, and also the University of Chicago kind of like encroaching on that neighborhood as well and putting black folks
yeah,
out. And I know that there have been like concessions, and I know that like the neighborhood is kind of agreed, and people have worked. I don't want to speak to those organizers and speak for those folks. Of course, I don't know that struggle personally, but I do
mhm,
know that there have been like wins and losses and mixed feelings
mhm,
about the Presidential Library opening up and being there in general. But I also think there's no, I don't know, I can't tell you where any other presidential library is in the country. I know there's one in Texas for George Bush, but I don't know
mhm,
where the hell it is. I also know that it's not a place that's accessible for young black people and or people of color to be there, and to be in a library that has the funding and the percent the sustaining legacy that a
mhm,
library of presidential caliber will have, that will
mhm,
be around for decades, generations
mhm,
after Obama and Michelle are dead and gone. You know what I mean?
mhm,
In a place that is going to be, hopefully remain a black neighborhood, and
mhm.
continue to have access to, you know, top of the line books and world class
Yeah.
events and things like that. I know that also has value, right?
Mhm.
The building itself in
Mhm.
that way, and what it will, the opportunities it will create, hopefully for Black people and people of color for the sustained future. But
Mhm.
also, a part of me is like, damn, Barack, 10 years post, you still, are you able to? And I think he does. He's doing more. Like he shows up to like the interviews, the podcast interviews, stuff like that. But it's like, and what you're saying though, I
Mhm.
want you to say something a little more. Like,
Yeah.
give something for us now. You
I
know what I
think
mean?
unfortunately, I don't think we're the target audience though. And I don't say that to be yeah, I don't say that
Melanie
to
said
oh,
it first.
yeah, and I mean that as a double entendre, not just like I don't think well, honestly, it's difficult because it is conflicting. Like I think if you were to ask black folks like who do you think the best president was? Oh,
Barack
it's
Obama,
definitely Barack Obama. And if they don't say
without
Barack Obama, they're gonna say Bill Clinton. Because they
yeah,
called Bill Clinton the first black president before Barack
yeah,
Obama. Problematic, like deeply problematic, as
yeah.
Professor Price would say. That's deeply problematic. But I think something that I've come to learn is that a lot of people really don't care about the day to days of a presidency. I remember there was a quote that I came across when we were in college, and it was like, presidents are like to be a president, you kind of have to be evil. Like, not super evil, not like villainy, evil, but you are making decisions that that are going to affect things. You are holding
There are
immense
life and death
power. There
every
are
day.
life and death decisions. You
Mhm.
are deploying people in the name of your country, right?
Yeah,
You are doing these things that are going to have an effect on people in other countries, and you're doing it willfully, proudly. And so, like, there kind of has to be a little dissociation that, like, yeah, I did kinda bomb these people, but, like, look at you. Like, you're here. You didn't get bombed, so, like, I'm a great president, right? And I think, unfortunately, it's double-sided because we as Black folks saw the ways in which Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and their children were criticized heavily when they were in the White House. Even the
hey,
misogyny that was towards Michelle was disgusting. The way that they continuously not only tried to degrade her, but they did degrade her publicly. They degraded her in the press. They degraded her in front of her face. Like that was horrible. And I think we all knew it was obviously because they were Black. And I think it gets
mhm,
to a point where, like, okay, now beyond this, because it was never about their credentials, right? I think that was something that's
mhm,
also interesting. As they talked a lot about like him not being American. They assumed that he wasn't American, that was like he was Kenyan. They talked about his mother being white. They talked about all these different things, but people were very aware that like, okay, yeah, you're a senator. You're a senator from Chicago. The yes we can. I'm down with that. Yeah, we can. And I think we talked about it in Dr. Bryce's class when we had her in the political class that we took, is that she talked about that he was able to connect to various different types of people because he came from a multi-ethnic and a multiracial family. He
yeah.
was able to connect with you about the ways in
And
which
that's
maybe
why his lens is what it
his
is.
lens is affected by that,
Mhm.
ideally. And I think, like, I don't know. I just don't think we're the target audience because ultimately I think
He thinks it's a bigger program.
yeah, and I think ultimately, I think that is he feels like that was the radical thing. That,
Yeah,
yes, I was the first Black president. That's radical enough.
yeah.
Like, I don't have to be open, like and I don't think I don't know, it's conflicting because, like, on one hand, I get it, girl. Like, sure, I guess. And on the other hand, it's like, but as a human, though, forget the presidency. Do you not see how these things are happening? And I think it's kind of ironic that the presidential library is bringing immense access, like as we mentioned, books and resources and tourism and money, like to this community, while also like displacing the very people that live there. That like for me to get access to the thing that could make my life better, I have to lose my home and I
Right.
have to lose my safe space. And it may actually take me longer to get there because like now I can't even walk there maybe because you took my home. Now I probably got to catch a bus or I got to drive there. And I think things like that, it's always that. I feel like that's kind of been
Right.
the constant juxtaposition in the presidency of like, yes, you are the first Black president. That's amazing. Yes, you are very well educated. You're very smart. On the other hand, you're also getting like berated by the press. They're talking about you horribly. But I also can't seek accountability from you when it comes to the ways in which Black folks that look like me and you were being
Like
harmed by this
suffer at
country.
your hand. Yeah. I can't
that people
I
who
can't
look
hold
like
you
us.
accountable for the things that
Yeah,
you do against the people that look like us
because
because
you being there feel like that's your gift to me, and I think that's where Black folks are kinda like,
and a lot of other black folks accept the gift. A lot of
yeah,
other black folks are okay with that being like the only thing, the
yeah.
symbolic win being enough.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
why I
think
say
that
the pedagogy of the oppressed is always that. When you
yeah,
ask what good is representation, for some people, representation is more than
is that,
enough.
yeah,
Representation is not only, you know what? Yeah, we can be the president. It doesn't matter if you're doing things that are, quote unquote good or quote unquote bad. It's because like you're the president. You got to the place that they said you could never be. That's good enough for me.
not
That's good
enough.
enough. Which is
It
why
ain't
when we talk about Clarence Thomas, yes, Clarence Thomas is ultra conservative. Clarence Thomas has made it clear that he does not associate with the plight of black people nor the identity of black people. And yet, even in our counting, I mean, because he is black, people still feel like you made it to the Supreme Court.
mhm,
That's good. I can make it to the Supreme Court.
right.
Okay, you're the president. Yes, you bombed people, but like I could be president. And if
Mhm,
you're president, then maybe that changes. I feel like it's also double sided, as we talked about in the class one, so that maybe it changes for some people the perspective that they feel as though they're constantly having to overcome. If you're under in some sort of an oppressive state or you belong to an identity that's constantly oppressive, you start to really internalize the stereotypes that are happening against you. If
yeah,
people keep telling you that based on what you look like, without them knowing you, that you are this, that you are that, you seek representation in any form you can get it. No, you can't say that I'm uneducated or poor because someone who looks like me is the president. You can't
mm,
say that don't have access to things, that I don't deserve access to things because someone who looks like me is on the Supreme Court. It doesn't matter about their personal politics because to them, and I think to a lot of people, symbolism is that I can see myself in you, even if you are antithetical to what I believe in, even if we are immorally and completely different, because you look like me. So then, like, that's me. Now I'm there. And unfortunately, like, it's hard to have conversations not only with those representatives and those people who are in those positions, but people who feel that way. Because then when you're like, yeah, babe, but what about the harm that's perpetuating against you in these positions? It doesn't matter
all
because
these
they're
things.
in those positions in the first place. So, I don't think symbolism for a lot of folks, not even just Black folks, for all minority people will ever be enough because I think we have always been working in a deficit. I think this country has always made it seem as though non-white folks don't belong in those positions. So, no matter what non-white person is in that position, for a lot of folks, that is the win. I don't need you to be good, I need you to get there. I don't need you to be effective, I need you to be there. I need the numbers. I need it to work in my favor.
Yeah,
And, like,
it feels
unfortunately,
like it's a either or answer. It needs to be a yes and like yes,
hello.
get there and I need to be
And
accountable.
but I think
And
that
I
was
think
I don't know, it's hard.
it is also like I wonder. I think the misogynoir has a lot to do with it too, because I
Mhm.
think had Kamala won in 24, I think a lot of people would have had it. It would have been a lot easier for folks to hold her accountable than it would have been to hold Barack Obama accountable. I think that they would have
Yeah,
been ready to jump down her throat for anything that she did wrong very quickly, ready to impeach her ass with a quickness. So I think, and juxtapose that also with
yeah,
some actions of our current president, and if Barack Obama had even a whiff of trying to do some of those things, you know what I mean? His ass would have been out of there too. So it's like whiteness
yeah,
always prevails, and
definitely.
I think it's just a constant reminder that all of these positions and all of these things are in a lot of ways affirmation of white supremacy. But we done got way off topic.
Yeah.
My bad. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah.
wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the the final points. Announcement. So we are switching podcast recording hosting platform. So we will be creating a Raising the 5% Substack. This
Mhm.
episode should already be available on there as well, but that'll be where all the episodes are released and kind of produced moving forward in the future. There also will be, of course, everything with all full episodes will still be free, of course, but maybe we'll do some extra incentives to include maybe a paid subscription option, early access episodes, and or maybe longer uncut things because we do have a tendency to go long and
Yeah,
say
we talked a little bit.
some crazy stuff. But and also just maybe opportunities to create more resources, community interactions, and things like that as well. So stay tuned for that. More details come in, more details to follow. We haven't disclose it yet or flesh it out. But we also want to create opportunities for other Black lawyers and attorneys to write. So hopefully that's also a space for that too, to share things that you're writing or to uplift things that you already wrote and maybe published, that we can just share that and give it larger access and larger platforms as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and highlight this episode of the pod, and be sure to also let us know things you want to talk about and hear about. We are in July, so application season is coming up for all of the things relatively soon. I might be applying with y'all to get my LLM. We'll see how it
Hello.
goes in a month or so. So,
Hello.
but yeah, so those are my announcements. Did you have anything, Ma?
No, that's really it. I will just echo or I guess continue and like we want to continue to build RTFP as like a space that not only encourages communicative input but just really is centered towards Black folks who are in the legal field, who are aspiring to be in the legal field, especially because we have literally been there. Any question that you may have, whether it's like about applying, whether it's about practicing, whether it's about being in law school, I guarantee you we have not only asked those questions to ourselves, but
Right.
to each other multiple times. And so we really just want this to be a resource that it just doesn't feel like there's any gimmick or that you feel like you have to come a certain way. Like if you just have a question about something, let us know. We do have in our link tree on our Instagram a drop down form where if you want to see someone in particular, even if it's you on the podcast, where you can suggest that if you want to hear a certain topic. We got one what's the word, inquiry, and we ended up doing an episode about it, and it was about personal statements. So we do listen, we do read them because we really want this to be very focused on just building the 5%, and honestly forget building it, like increasing it. So yeah, that's kind of all I want to add, but we welcome that. Please stay tuned though for everything. Like I would love to read what y'all are writing about the current state of the legal atmosphere, even if it's about anything that you feel like it doesn't have to do with law. If it has any intersection, like we'd be more than welcome to read it
Yeah.
and possibly publish
And
it.
if you're
But
like, if you're someone who wants to write something that needs a level of anonymity, um,
mhm,
happy to
we can
post
do
those.
that too.
You
Yeah.
know, so I know, because I know that we all have to think about kind of the implications of the things we write and say and how they may tie to livelihood. So we're happy
Yeah.
to have that cover through our little bubble at our
Yeah.
RTP.
Yeah.
Our,
We just want this to be the platform. Y'all got the plan. We the
you know,
platform.
so
That's it.
but we'll catch y'all next time. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, do all the things, and we'll sign it out. See y'all later.
Thanks
Peace.
for watching.
All right, it's gonna hang up when I end it. So
Oh, okay.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Mm.